chasing a feeling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. This is your host, Tara Martini, along with host Becky McNattin. We are glad to have you listening as we live and share stories of mental health.
Tara, a few weeks ago, we did a show all about disappointment, and we focused this on when people disappoint us. As happens frequently, we had incredible questions and comments from listeners about their own experiences of disappointment. And one person really caused us to pause when they said, "So what do I do when I disappoint myself?
Yes.
How can I respond to me when the person who disappointed me is me? And the disappointment came from me." And you and I looked at each other and we both said, well, yeah, that needs to be a show by itself.
Yes.
Not necessarily because we need to respond completely differently than in the context of relationships with other people, but because the reality of disappointing ourselves is that we have a relationship with ourselves and is owed its own dedicated space on the show. It's a big topic and one that comes with sizable feels. So thank you, listener, for calling out the facet of disappointment that happens internally with just us because we disappointed us. We're going to talk today about the experience of disappointing ourselves, of personal accountability, of gentleness, of acknowledging the moment and absorbing it without necessarily placing our identity in it. But first, Tara, what are your initial thoughts about the experience of personal disappointment?
When I think about the experience of personal disappointment, I think about how and I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate to, how I have, as I've aged, how I've handled disappointment differently.
Yeah.
So that, my goodness, when I disappointed myself in my 20s, my response was very different.
Such a good point.
When I experienced personal disappointment in my 30s, it looked different. And now in my late 40s, it looks different as well. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I still have personal disappointment, whatever decade, but it's how I handle it after.
Well, as you're talking, I'm thinking how even what disappoints us about ourselves would change over the course of time. The
Very
actual
true.
scenarios and things that we do, our actions would cause us to disappoint ourselves, would maybe evolve over time. But as you're talking about, what we do in terms of response to ourselves changes over time. When the person you disappoint is you, how is this different from when we feel disappointed by other people?
I think, and some people may disagree, I think we hold on to it longer. I think we internalize it more, and I think we sit in it longer. Because with other people, we can rationalize it. We can find a reason why. But I think that's more difficult with ourselves.
Well, you have me smiling. Listeners, I think we're both smiling in part because I have a feeling that we're both actively thinking about times we've disappointed ourselves as we're talking right now. And to me, we're going to get into this throughout the show, but when the person you disappoint is you are with it all the time. We don't get removal from it.
Correct.
So things that would maybe be distractions or coping tools for relational hurt don't work because we are literally with us.
Right.
And because our mind continues to think about the thing that disappointed us. And there probably are some unique emotions when it is us with us.
Well, you're someone who says this many times, and I say this many times as well. How often do we say to our clients, to our friends, to our family members, and on the show, sit in those feelings?
Yeah.
Sit in that disappointment, sit in that anger, that sadness, whatever it is. Well, when we disappoint ourselves, we're sitting in that disappointment and we're never leaving.
Yeah, we are immersed in it.
Yes.
Such an interesting topic here. Right now, we're going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned as we talk through navigating the moments when the person you disappoint is you. Thank you for listening to Feels Out Loud. We'll be back in just a moment.
From nobody else, all you got to do now. Nothing to lose. In a world full of strangers, you don't know that's right.
Welcome back to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. I am Tara Martini, along with Becky McNattin. Let's dive right back into our discussion on disappointment.
Since we had our show on disappointment, I've been thinking about the concept a lot. I've been pondering the times that people have disappointed me and how I responded to it. And maybe because I knew we were doing this show, I've been thinking about how often I am disappointed in myself. Now, this runs the spectrum. I am not saying, everyone, that I wallow in self-disappointment every single day.
Right.
But there are so many experiences that I bump into personal disappointment and regret of my choices. For example, I wake up and somehow find myself running late again in the morning, and I get disappointed that I didn't wake up earlier or that I didn't pack my lunch the night before, like I said I was going to. I disappoint myself when I say things I don't mean. For example, literally just the other day, I was already crabby. It was a crabby day, and I wanted to go to bed. As I was moving around my bedroom, I dropped something behind a dresser, and I just kind of lost it. And after about a minute, I calmed down, but then I had this wave of disappointment in making a tiny situation a way bigger deal than it needed to be. And certainly there are big moments when I get disappointed with my choices too. And those aren't every day, but when they happen, I have monstrous guilt. What role does disappointment have in your life, Tara?
I think you bring up such a good point that we're not talking about just like the big moments where we've disappointed ourselves, that it's the tiny things. Disappointment, what role does that play in my life? Well, it definitely plays a role.
Yeah.
Maybe. And it is around things I find that where it's the loudest for me, the disappointment is the loudest, is on things that I have actively tried to be better with and have not made improvements.
Got it.
That is where I would say it's the loudest.
Got it. Things that have been on your mind before, maybe things that have even disappointed you before.
Yes.
That either you haven't taken action on or things you have tried to take action on and are still noticing the issue.
Right. Like I'm making progress, but it hasn't sustained. A
Yeah.
perfect example is you mentioned it briefly. I have a tendency to run and it's always like 5 to 7 minutes late. And goodness, I work on it so much. And yet I'll go back to it. And every single time, the first thing I feel is disappointment and shame.
And so as you're talking, you have me thinking about disappointment in ourselves seems to happen when we don't live up to the expectations we have of ourselves. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my first thought is, are the expectations we've set for ourselves too high? Have we set an expectation that is a good fit for our capacity in which we're living right now?
Yeah.
I think we have a tendency sometimes to forget about the various facets of our life. I mean, regarding mental health, right? Like we sometimes are going through the storm, but yet we don't change the expectations for ourselves, whether we're in the storm or the clear.
Right.
And I think we need to be more aware of that, but we tend to still have that same level of disappointment in ourselves.
Right.
Oh, I'm running late. Okay, but also, honey, you're going through a really difficult time in your life. Well, but I'm running late.
Right.
Okay, we need to give ourselves more grace. And so it's being aware of what standard have I set for myself and when can I allow myself some grace?
Yeah. And a blog by Maria Connolly states this exact thought. Since we're our own worst critics, we tend to turn off compassion and turn on self-disgust when we disappoint ourselves.
Yes.
And so what do you think of this quote?
To me, what stands out the most, and it's such a harsh phrase or set of words, self-disgust.
Yes, I hadn't really heard it coined that way, but it makes sense.
I've never heard it coined that way. And when it is, it's so profound.
Yeah.
Like, wow. And I think so often it is, we have no self-compassion for ourselves, but yet we're willing, and we've talked about this in other episodes, whether it's about conflict or things like that, that we so often and easily give compassion for others, but we have such a difficult time giving ourselves compassion and grace.
Yeah.
And we default to self-disgust, personal disappointment. We need to adjust that.
Yeah.
But how do we do it? That's the challenge.
Yeah. And that maybe we move, as she states, from compassion literally to disgust. There isn't even a neutrality space.
No, I mean, those are very
yes. And you and I
two ends
wanted
of
to
the
know,
spectrum.
in what ways do people disappoint themselves? So we asked.
Yes.
We asked some people in our lives, and people said a ton of things. Will you read us the list?
I would. What I ate, when I went to sleep, what I didn't get done, not prioritizing relationships, how I spent my time, sometimes right after I did something that I felt like a waste of time, losing my cool for no reason, not being disciplined enough to stay focused on a goal, falling into old habits, lack of being productive, not exercising, avoiding others, not saying what I wanted to say, lying to someone I care about, lack of motivation, being late, forgetting things, lack of follow through, not responding to people's emails, texts, voicemails, not listening to my body, trying to do too much, overscheduling myself, messing up, and we could go on forever. The list was long.
Yeah, you might see yourself in that list, people. Disappointment doesn't show up in just one shape or form. Sometimes you are disappointed in outcomes you can't control. Sometimes you are disappointed in things you can control because you dropped the ball.
Right.
Or maybe you are disappointed because you didn't know you could control that thing at the time, but now you realize you could have. And that almost hurts worse.
Yes.
Because we're looking back and saying, I could have done something about this thing. Sometimes you want something so badly and not obtaining it causes disappointment. Sometimes you actually get what you were searching for or wanting only to receive it and be disappointed in how it feels or how it ended up.
Such a good point.
And then maybe you feel disappointed in yourself for even wanting it in the first place. Disappointment everywhere. What stands out to you about the list of things that caused people to feel disappointed in themselves?
The disappointment's inevitable. No, that
right.
that
Yes.
it is, to me, what stood out in that list is that it is a part of most of our day. That it can take up from something a person ate to how the amount of time they're getting to sleep. It's every facet of someone's day. I'm not saying that they feel disappointment all day long, but it's a very universal concept that people are feeling it every single day. And it's involving very elementary universal things.
Yeah.
Sleeping, eating, responding, communication, relational, different concepts. It impacts every area of our life.
Yeah, that was what stood out to me about the list. Now, when you and I asked people, that list was created in a couple of hours. We just asked people, what causes you to feel disappointed in you? And the answers just were all over the place. So I noticed as you were reading the list that the level of daily life integration of the experience of disappointment, and I wondered how often people were aware of how prevalent disappointment is. How often are they carrying it on their shoulders, or are they thinking about it that they're not really even aware? And to that point of like disappointed in you actually get something that you want. Sometimes we're disappointed in not getting something, the job that we were interested in or the house or something like that. But sometimes we get something and we actually are disappointed in having gotten it because it wasn't what we thought it would be.
And I think that's such a good point because people are used to, I didn't get the house, I didn't get the apartment. That is more in your face.
Yes.
But what you just described is so important to realize.
And I once wanted an apartment really badly that I went to bat to get. And me and some roommates had agreed to move in together, and they didn't really want this particular place.
Oh, no.
But I was set on it. And I very likely bulldozed the process of searching as I pretty much said, this is where I was living. And that was that. So everyone in the end agreed to move in, and I got the thing that I wanted. But then after we moved in, I didn't like living there.
What?
Like instantaneously. I didn't like the place and I didn't like the location. And I was disappointed in myself for wanting it so badly and not thinking of any of the factors, truly any of them, people, that other people had brought up. And I was disappointed in myself for the way I acted and pressured other people into moving there. It was disappointment from many angles.
Wow.
And so when we're thinking about what disappoints us, that sometimes it even is like, I'm disappointed that I wanted that to begin with. I know something different now that I didn't know then.
Right.
And part of us bringing this up even was to see like how prevalent is it? When listeners have been reaching out to us about this topic too, and we've been talking about this with people, we've been hearing things that feel like they hover around this concept of, is the disappointment coming from something I should be disappointed about even?
Mm-hmm.
And this is fascinating to me because it gets at the idea of, did I actually do something wrong? Or is this an issue of self-criticality?
Mm.
And you highlighted this just a couple minutes ago in sort of judgment, when we talk about self-disgust. Was it wrongdoing?
Right.
Or is this an issue of self-criticality? And there is a difference here. What would you say about it?
There is a huge difference. It is that idea of, did I make a poor choice or poor decision in that moment where I should have done better, right?
Mhm.
Been a better human, made a better decision, selected differently, where in the end, when you finally realize that, yeah, I was wrong, right?
Mhm.
Or is it just that idea of going back on the concept I brought up earlier of, were my standards for myself far too high and I
Mhm.
wasn't allowing myself any grace or patience or compassion, where I was just being so self-critical
Mhm.
that this disappointment, this personal disappointment, really was unwarranted.
Mhm.
It's figuring out, okay, which one is it?
Right.
And both of them, though, in my opinion, simply take reflection.
Right.
It's just a matter of our capacity to be able to do so.
And that when we feel disappointment, it's a really good point, because when we feel disappointment, it tends to be distressing. We don't want to. So we do something to kind of shove it somewhere else, when that would not serve us, because we're not really figuring out, is this us around expectation of self, or is this us judging us? Is this wrongdoing?
So I have to ask you, going back to the apartment question,
Yeah.
back when that happened, because I imagine this was not recently,
Yes.
did you realize back then, like, take the time to reflect and go, ooh,
Not a chance. Not a chance. No. Only now I knew I
Correct.
felt badly. I knew I felt badly, and I knew
good
I
point.
had regret because I
Yes.
didn't like the place.
Okay.
And I knew I felt a level of responsibility for us being there because I had wanted it.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But no. And did I address it? Listeners, not at all.
Absolutely
Not at all.
But it shows how we handle it in different stages of our life.
Yeah, and it you and I've talked about this on the show, that feelings are not facts.
Mhm.
That it makes me consider this concept of, does feeling disappointment mean that we did something disappointing?
Mm,
Well,
mhm.
feels aren't facts. If we
Right.
feel the experience of disappointment, that doesn't mean, when you're saying be thoughtful and reflecting on, was this wrongdoing or self-criticality, the disappointment might be there.
Mhm.
That we need to allow ourselves and lean into that experience of uncomfortable,
Mhm.
maybe awkward, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll get to a spot where the disappointment was actually something that was disappointing.
Right.
And I want us to highlight some ways that people might be able to tell the difference between wrongdoing and self-criticality.
Let's do it. So,
Tell us the first one.
first one, take this outside yourself. Try and consider a perspective outside of your own. If someone in your life did this thing, what would your reaction be?
Yeah, good question.
Would you be disappointed in them? How might you respond to this person?
Hmm.
So, Becky, have you ever had a time when you realized that your reaction to yourself was very different from the reaction you would have if this was another person?
Oh my gosh, yes. Frequently.
Mhm.
And I've learned about myself that I'm quite hard on me.
No.
I know. As I think is a noted universal concept.
For sure.
And recently, I triple booked myself in one evening.
That also doesn't surprise me because you're always so busy.
And if I would have looked, I would have known. One of my kiddos had a concert that I needed to go to, and I booked myself in 2 other spots, telling people I was available. If I would have known, I looked, I would have known this thing. But I caught myself in this circumstance of moving outside of myself, as you just said, taking a role of, if this were not me, if this were someone else, what would my reaction be? And I was very clear of, if someone else called me, now I caught this well in advance. I didn't no show anybody, or I told people I can't I can't get together that night. I need to cancel plans. I don't think they cared at all. I do not think they cared.
Really?
I cared
Mhm.
because I kept saying, well, a good friend would not have done this.
Mhm.
This is not a respectful of the relationship. And so, yes, I was way harder on myself than I for sure would have been to somebody outside of me.
Yep.
How about you?
I would say, as far as an example of considering a perspective outside of my own, I recently made, it was a small error with something related to my kiddos, like something that had to be done for her school, but it was my job to get it done. Um, and it was not a big deal at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like I'm the worst mom in the world.
Mm.
And I do think that is also a universal concept with a lot of women of, we make one mistake
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like, well, the end of the world is here.
Right.
But also, when I take the time to look outside of myself, and if that happened to you, right, I would never be like, Becky, how dare you make a mistake?
Totally.
Um, I would give you compassion and just be like, girl, that happens.
Right.
We're all so busy. But why can't I? Definitely didn't give that to myself.
So if somebody's wondering and they're saying, well, take it outside of yourself,
Mhm.
this helps you denote wrongdoing,
Mhm.
self-criticality.
Yep.
The second one is are you aware of the expectations you set for yourself? So we talked about expectations already probably 3 times in this show.
Mhm.
Are you aware of them?
Mhm.
Not only are they unrealistic, but are you aware of them? Do you truly know what these are? And everybody, are they fair? This is super tough because we talked in our last show about high standards versus unrealistic expectations, our last show on disappointment. And it's an incredible thing to have high standards.
Mhm.
That means we want to show up for this world around us and be our truest self in the best ways we can. I love that.
Mhm.
High standards to me have an element of flexibility, though. It means that someone says they believe in excellence and quality, but perhaps see that the available resources in any given moment are fluid and can change. High standards have
Mm.
an ability to recognize context. Unrealistic expectations, on the other hand, are fixed. They feel rigid to me and unchanging, and I think in big part, this is what makes them unrealistic. Life can't be filled with these fixed rules because what we have to draw from in any given moment is different. And I have an example of this. I like to participate in workplace events. I always have. And I would guess that listeners out there, you might have some life moments where there's a workplace event to be a part of. So you might resonate with
Mhm.
this. These are meant to be fun and lighthearted and probably even connecting or bonding. I was once at a workplace that had a bake off and everyone signed up to bring things. Now, I have high standards, perhaps unrealistic expectations, everyone. And so I was going to not only sign up, but I was going to bring a family recipe, have it be something incredible, and share the cool story about why this recipe was so important. And the
Mm.
staff were pumped about this bake off. It was a super cute idea
Yep.
that there were these categories and there were going to be prizes and voting. And people talked us up a ton before it happened. I may have told people that I would be making an heirloom recipe. And then life happened for me. Much longer story, but on the day of, I didn't have my bake off submission. I actually brought nothing. And I didn't even have a chance that week to make it to the grocery store to buy the items.
Mm.
A few people asked me about where my submission was, not because they cared at all if I had anything, but because I had said I was bringing something.
You talked a big game.
Yep. And I had to say that I didn't bring anything. And this was not how I like to show up for relationships or thoughtful plans. Other people had put a ton of work into planning this thing, and I told myself I was a crappy human for
Mm.
not having any contribution. Did anyone care?
No.
Besides me? Likely no.
Mm-mm.
And I couldn't allow myself to see that the circumstances required me to shift my expectations of myself. High standards recognize the bar we set, but may also give space for the broader situation. Unrealistic expectations don't. They write the word always in front of expectations of self, which is exactly to me why they're unrealistic. What are your thoughts?
First of all, great example. I completely agree with you in, nobody probably cared.
Yeah.
They were probably like, "Oh, I'm sorry that you had a busy week," or whatever it
Right.
was, that life happens. Um, I think your last sentence is so poignant in that, how you said that high standards recognize the bar we set, but then unrealistic expectations don't, in that it's the absolute.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
create the always in front of expectations of self, which is why they're so unrealistic.
Yeah.
And to me, as I'm hearing your example and we're going over that definition, I keep coming back to what I said earlier about it's as women, I feel like we do this. We just have the standard we've set for ourselves that we have to be all the things all the time.
Yeah.
There is no comfort, particularly when social media came out.
Mhm.
Every female looks like they are doing all the things and they're doing it perfectly with the highest standard. And those unrealistic expectations that are set for people somehow are meeting them. But meanwhile, those of us are holding a phone and looking, going,
Right.
I'm not even meeting the basic requirements here.
Yeah. Right.
Where we're set up to feel like failures.
Yeah.
Right? Where in the end, we're looking at what you define as unrealistic expectations, but we're internalizing them as the basic standard.
Right. So tell us about the third one.
Okay, so if you're trying to process wrongdoing and self-criticality, criticality, consider the situation in the context of your value system.
Yes.
Are they in alignment? And we talk about this so much just with our clients and friends. Or does the circumstance conflict with what you believe and who you believe yourself to be?
Mhm.
So go to that core.
Yep.
How we should act, what we should say, rules to follow, tasks to accomplish, ways to spend time, things to believe in, values to uphold. It can be a lot to recognize at the same time. And
Yes.
sometimes we miss the mark of a standard we hold ourselves to.
Yes.
This is human, but we forget that part.
Yep.
Sometimes we do mess up. If we know what we believe and value, we can hold our actions accountable to these and acknowledge when our behavior isn't matching our value system.
Mhm.
So, for example, if you value honesty and then are reflecting on a moment when you lied to someone,
Mhm.
this likely causes disappointment in self, and perhaps we need to consider context, as we just talked about.
Yep.
But we also really need to hold ourselves to the beliefs that we have. So
Yep.
go down to the center, the core of our values. There are times when we make mistakes and are hurtful to others, and we need to acknowledge this, but we also have to acknowledge we're human
Yeah.
and
So
we mess up.
it does go back to that moment of that we were just talking about on unrealistic expectations versus high standards.
Yes.
Awesome to have high standards, and I think it's we need values
Mhm.
and beliefs. They are what give us a roadway for our lives. So when we are not operating in alignment with those,
Mhm.
it is important to address and hold ourselves accountable.
Yep.
This is what personal accountability looks like within, as you pointed out beautifully just now, uh, a system of gentleness
Mhm.
and thinking through what we would do to address it. We also want to have people ask you themselves,
Yes.
if you're trying to delineate between wrongdoing and disappointment, self-critical nature,
Mhm.
has someone talked to me about this? Is it a pattern? If someone or multiple people have talked to you about the issue or the situation, perhaps this requires a response and the circumstance needs addressing. And you can notice patterns all on your own.
That's
To
a
everybody.
great idea.
It doesn't have to be something that someone else has brought up. Think through it, though. Is this a situation that has come up before and you were disappointed in yourself at that time too? If so, then this may be something beyond self-criticality.
That's a very good point. And to add to that, if someone's thinking like, well, give me an example, it could be someone may not have said to you, "Oh, you're late again."
Mhm.
But it could be you think about it, wow, I have apologized to my boss, to my friend, to whoever, my partner. Sorry, I'm late again.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm late.
Yes.
And that is
Yes.
what you remember. There's your pattern.
Yes.
So let's think about an intensity scale from 0 to 10 and consider the issue that is causing disappointment in yourself. So
Good thought.
you're going to take that disappointment in yourself, you're going to rate it on a scale of 0 to 10 for how big of a deal it is, and try to be objective. So kind of almost while you're being reflective, look at it kind of like from the outside of, not be biased about it.
Mhm.
Really think about, is this a big deal in the scheme of things? And then consider your reaction to yourself on that same intensity scale.
Yeah.
In the scheme of things, thinking objectively, how big of a deal is it, 0 to 10? If the situation is a 2, on how big of a deal it is, does your disappointment respond match to that?
Yeah.
So
Good
is your
point.
response of disappointment accurately respond to that too? This might help you identify if it's self-criticality at play.
Yeah. And I would say probably everybody listening,
Mhm.
me included, there are times that if I was real with myself on, is this a big deal? I might say, actually, this is not a big deal compared to what my reaction is.
Mhm.
It, we're saying that a 2 on the is still a deal.
Yeah,
But if our reaction is a 9 in
right.
terms of how we're thinking about it, how much time we're spending ruminating about it, how we keep reviewing it, that does not seem in alignment.
Mhm.
And that perhaps self-criticality might be a part of things. So let's talk through some common responses when we disappoint ourselves.
Mhm.
Sadness and guilt are big facets of disappointment when it is with us. The feeling of guilt is a huge difference to me between disappointment in ourselves and disappointment we experience in relationships with others. Where resentment might be more prominent in relational
For
disappointment,
sure.
guilt can be a massive component when the person we disappoint is us. And sometimes guilt can be a healthy thing.
Mhm.
We've talked about when we have actually
Yep.
experienced wrongdoing or did not operate within our value system. Sometimes the disappointment in ourselves and that guilt that it causes can serve as a space for reflection and action to change something. It does lead, though, potentially, that guilt to what is another common response. Tell us that one.
Yes. And that is self-punishment.
Huge with guilt.
Oh. So, we might tell ourselves, I don't deserve to feel good. I
Mhm,
deserve to be in pain.
mhm.
Withholding happiness. How many times have we done that? Or we set a goal for ourselves and then quit doing the action steps needed to pursue it out of that self-punishment,
Yes. Almost
which
like sabotage it.
exactly.
Yeah,
We isolate from others, which is so true. And I think there's a lot of listeners right now going, "Oh, yep,
yeah,
for sure I do that."
right.
Or we give up. We discard of something as soon as a barrier comes into play. So the minute it gets a little difficult, we just discard it and go, "Nope, I'm done."
Yeah, right. As a way of, in the end, kinda, I'm not owed that thing in the end.
Right, because all of what I just said is grounded in guilt and shame.
Yeah. And certainly guilt, sadness can
Yep,
lead to this third thing, negative self-talk.
yep.
You and I have mentioned negative self-talk a couple times on the
Yes.
show. This is absolutely beating
Mm,
ourselves up by ruminating and replaying something. Our brains keep focusing on the details. And there's a gift there. Our brains are saying,
mm.
hey, we're going to try to come up with a new outcome that makes sense. So let's keep thinking about this thing.
Ruminate.
But it doesn't help us
Right.
because we end up sitting in that pattern, and it can also look, negative self-talk can also look like not taking any positive feedback or praise about things.
Just rejecting it
Yep.
straight out. Another common response is denial, a total avoidance that we did anything wrong, pretending it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Or looking the other way and not acknowledging it. And I think that one is huge and super common of not pretending it didn't happen, but that lack of acknowledgement.
Yes. Which I think is what I did in the example I gave about the apartment.
Mm,
I think it was, I knew the feels were
mhm,
over there and I knew the thoughts were over there. I did not acknowledge it
mhm,
at all. And denial is it can be a common strategy used for all sorts of things
mhm.
that can be helpful in getting through a moment, but there definitely is an impact to self when we don't come back and acknowledge the thing.
Oh, goodness, yes.
And it is a really similar, denial is very similar to the last common response, and that's deflection.
Yep.
We minimize our actions. It's not a big deal, is what we say to
Mm,
ourselves. And I think this happens often when we feel shame about wrongdoing, when
for
we are
sure.
disappointed in us because we actually feel like we didn't operate within our value system,
Mm,
because we hurt someone else. And we say things like, I'm not hurting anybody,
mhm,
or their hurt is not as big of a deal as they're making it. Sometimes we say to ourselves, that's just who I am.
mhm.
It's what I do. As almost like it's self-acceptance.
Right.
Maybe we blame it on someone or something else. I only did it because you did something too. Or we make ourselves feel better by cutting someone else down. Well, I might have done something wrong, but I definitely wasn't as bad
Mhm.
as, and fill in the blank. That is all deflection, which we do have to own.
Right.
When we respond that way,
Yep.
okay, thoughtfully, Let me think about this.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone were to notice disappointment,
Mm-hmm.
I want to go through a couple of steps because, hey, everybody, if you have one of these common responses,
Right.
you find yourself saying, yeah, I do feel disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Notice the moment, pause and slow down.
Mhm.
We want to speed up and stop feeling distress.
Yep.
Challenge yourself to not think about the next thing or the moment that hasn't happened yet. Stay in the current one. It's hard, even if it feels bad or awkward or uncomfortable. Give space for it. Identify and reflect on the emotions you're feeling. So name them. I'm serious, everybody. Maybe even interact with them. Offering space for feelings does not mean we let them rule our decisions.
Well,
We
it's
don't
what we
have,
say.
yeah, we don't have to decide anything from our emotions, but they can be information to help us meaning make about our experience. Feeling bad and giving space for this doesn't even actually mean you did anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said, feelings aren't facts. Seek support from someone in your life who can help you problem solve around something. Who can you go to express vulnerably what your experience is?
Mm.
And this person or people, do they listen to your thoughts about it? Reach out to them and share this. Bringing people into our disappointment is hard, but it can give us perspective and can help us think through change, especially if self-criticality might be at play.
Right.
You and I talk all the time about compassionate curiosity. Disappointment is a moment when leaning in with wonder and gentleness is so key. Ask questions to yourself. Think about your personal expectations, as we mentioned. Consider whether they're realistic based on the context. Perhaps ask yourself about what you can learn from this. What if we considered disappointment not as failure, but as feedback? And what if disappointment was seen as an opportunity for self acceptance and grace? Truly an opportunity to practice.
Yes.
Things
Reframe.
aren't hard to practice, everybody, when they aren't hard to practice. I was talking to someone recently who was sharing about this work that they're doing on self-acceptance, which is very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And every example they shared was practicing self-acceptance on things like accepting people get to be who they are or accepting that I need to relinquish control. And that's beautiful. After talking a little bit more, I said, though, what would it be like to practice self-acceptance around hurting someone else's feelings or screwing up or acting in a way that didn't align with you? Reality is that we do mess up, as you said. And the disappointment we feel in ourselves is rooted in the dissonance between what we value and what we act like. This requires accountability and self-acceptance, but that's hard in those moments.
Yeah.
So what would you say, Tara, about this list?
Right. Love the list. As you are saying this list, to me, all of a sudden in my mind, I visualize like a cycle. And to kind of reframe it in that all of these things, none of these things really are bad in the end, in that if you're reflecting and sitting in this and looking at self-disappointment, but really reflecting for the purpose of growth, you may be feeling all these things. So it might be that you at some point minimize it and go, oh, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. I didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
But then you, in reflection, go, wait, Tara, yeah, that was a big thing that I did. And then, and you're taking each of these things where you could be going through all of these things to get then to the point of realization of, wow, like this is where I'm at. Did I actually do something wrong? Or was this me just being so self-critical that I did nothing wrong in the end?
Which is also, as you bring this up, is a space for us to work on self-acceptance.
Yes.
Because if we notice
totally.
that self-criticality is here,
Yes.
we can say, oh, how do I respond to that voice that is being highly judgy of me?
Yeah. It's like looking at it like stages of grief or anything else that has stages. I think we go through a number of these things until we get to the end of like a little self-discovery.
Yeah. Well, it highlights so beautifully, thank you for noting that we write disappointment as a bad thing. And I said, what if it isn't failure, it's feedback. But we write it as a bad thing because the emotions that come with it are difficult. But sometimes these circumstances can be helpful to sit in. I think about the times where I have really grown as a person, have been in those spaces of discomfort.
For sure, in some of the greatest moments.
Yes. So much to think about here. It's been a cool discussion. We're headed to a commercial break, but when we come back, we will talk through questions from you all, our listeners. Feels Out Loud will process your thoughts in just a moment.
From nobody else, all you got to do now. Nothing to lose. you lost.
We are back again with Feels Out Loud, and this part of the show is where we talk through questions from you all, our fabulous listeners. If you have a question related to mental wellness, sharing feelings, or topics for each week that you'd like us to process through, please visit our website at becomingtogethermn.com and find the Feels Out Loud page to submit a question directly, or email us at contact@becomingtogethermn.com. Of course, follow us on social media as well. We really do want to hear from you and what you are wondering about.
And thank you, listeners, for sending in comments about moments where disappointment towards you or disappointment in ourselves has been experienced. You are our inspiration for the show today, even. First listener, Tara, said, I am currently feeling major disappointment in myself. I do the same thing over and over. It's a total pattern. And it isn't at all how I want to act, but I keep doing it. Is disappointment the same thing as shame? And what would you say to do?
Wow. Here's my first thought. How many times do we establish and realize we have a pattern of things that we realize are disappointing ourselves? And then rather than go, what are some realistic, smaller steps I can take to achieve this? We go, well, just change. Like to yourself.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Like just change. So let's say the being late thing. I'm not going to be late. Okay. But I would guarantee you're going to keep being late unless you implement some small changes. Did you maybe set a reminder on your phone? Do you change the clocks a little bit and adjust it?
Right.
Do you put up Post-it notes to remind you?
Yeah, maybe even deciding only one thing to try to be on time to.
Correct.
You're talking about partializing goals here.
Yes.
That this would be where unrealistic expectations come into play, of this idea of change without thinking about how monumental that is and seeing what incremental progress might look like.
Yes. What it takes to make that change is not just making a decision.
Yeah. I would say, listener, to your question of is disappointment the same as shame? No, they are not the same, although they are highly related. They are intertwined friends.
Yes.
That shame is the experience that I would say is perhaps a story we tell about ourselves, that we are bad, that likely is an end product of disappointment. Now, we might also experience shame at the same time of feeling disappointed. Like, I am a bad human for doing this thing. That's why guilt and shame are also friends that are tied into this. I love that you note it. So one of my most poignant things about this question from this listener was that if you're bringing up shame, you probably are thinking, I feel this experience of shame right now. And what would I say to do? This might be a time, if we're noticing patterns in our lives. I love your thought, Tara, about consider your expectations of what change looks like. To me, this might be a time to bring in some other people to your disappointment, including a professional. If you are noticing a pattern in your life that you've thought about and that this brings up intense feels for you, shame is a super challenging emotion to hold and take action in.
And to get out of.
Yes. Of course, you and I think in our biased view, Tara, don't believe that we ever do life alone. I think in our times of despair or desperate, shame is a desperate feel, that might be the time to try and resource ourselves.
Right.
And that could be professionally, especially if you're doing the same thing over and over and maybe have tried some things too. And this leads to the second question that we kind of answered.
We did.
Our last person says, I'm harsh to myself and this causes disappointment often. What is one small change I could make to live differently? What I would say to this person, notice it. One small change, awareness, self-awareness. Start there. And we've talked about that in this show. And we are already at the end of our show for today. Thank you for listening this morning, everyone. Join us next week as we process more mental health focused topics. And in the week ahead, be kind to yourself. Remember, connection fosters wellness, and your voice is one that the world around you needs to hear. Share yourselves, friends.
Some don't